So good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday morning. I am happy that you all were able to make it. I'm happy that you all are safe and healthy, and that you're here to join us on this learning journey. So welcome Blake and Sylvia and Sonia and Christine. We're one of our winners from our last training, All About Our Bodies. She won 2 books. And welcome Mina and Luz and Nancy. I can see them. That's why I'm calling their names. And I see Tiffany Jackson's photo. Hi, Tiffany. Haven't seen you in a few years. I'm happy that you were able to join, and welcome everyone else whose name I see, but I don't see a face. So I'll start by saying, I named this session Windows, Mirrors, and Sliding Doors. And that phrase may be familiar to some of you. I actually switched it around. So Dr. Rudine Smith Bishop, who's the Professor Emerita of Education at Ohio State University, she actually taught courses on children's literature, and she ended up writing an essay back in 1990 for Perspectives Journal. And the essay was titled Windows, Mirrors, and Sliding Glass Doors. And what she talked about there was that books are sometimes windows, and that when we bring rich literature to young children, they offer the world, to the views of the world, to those children and other children that may be real or imagined, similar or strange. And it is these windows that function as, sliding doors that children walk through to become a part of what the world that them and their family created or recreated. And I like to say that not just children, but the adults who care and educate them in different places, spaces, in environments, actually can take hold to what she calls windows, mirrors, and sliding doors. And I call windows, mirrors, and sliding doors. I switch the windows and the mirrors around. And Dr. Bishop went on to say that when we walk through that sliding door, that if the light is just right, that daylight or that nightlight is just right, then that window into that book becomes a mirror of who we are. That's transformative of what we call the human experience, because it can reflect back to us. And in that reflection, we see our lived experiences. Young children get to see their lives, their family reflected back to them. And that's part of that human experience. So I use her rich essay as a path forward for us here, because I think it applies when we consider diverse families, particular the LGBTQIA two-spirit families. And we're going to talk about some entry points today for those families. Before we move forward, I just want to be clear. So welcome to those who just came. This isn't a one-on-one about language and terminology. We're jumping right to here's what families experience when they come to our programs, and what could we do different about it. So I just want to be clear on that this isn't that, what does this term mean? And what does this term mean? And what does this term mean? Well, I thought that meant this. Those are rich experiences, but this one isn't that. This one is designed so that you can take these things right back to your work tomorrow and begin to make some immediate changes in your work with diverse children and families. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. For those who don't know me, I'm Shawn Bryant. I'm going to be your facilitator on this learning journey. And what I just have on the screen here is just some things about me. I am the director of YesToECE, professional development, coaching, consulting, and training that I provide across the country. And I guess outside of the country, because Canada's not in this country. So doing some work in Canada now, so internationally. And my second role is I'm program manager at Yale University at the Ziegler Center for Child Development and Social Policy. I train and facilitate project development on the Child Scale tool. It's a tool that we designed for mental health consultants in early learning settings so that they can assess the climate, the overall climate of a classroom and what teachers and children are experiencing, and use that as an entry point for change, mainly in those climates where young children are suspended and expelled. So it's just one mechanism that we've created to reduce and eliminate the suspension and expulsion rate in our early learning settings. All right, so I've been practicing gratitude since the beginning, probably April of the pandemic. And two young men are on the screen, Kevin Brahman, who's the father core administrator at First 5 Alameda, and Gary V. Thompson, who recently passed away. So Gary was a father, a grandfather, a partner to someone who he loved and cared about, and he recently transitioned and he's now an ancestor. So I'm just want to devote this training on diverse families, particularly diverse fathers, to Gary V. Thompson, who's been a support to me since the very, very beginning. And I honor him in his memory and all that he's left us. And of course, you can follow me on social media. It's on every single screen there. If you want to see what I'm up to, my thinking, all things ECE. So in this virtual learning session, we're going to raise awareness about diverse families. I'm going to say diverse families a lot so that I don't have to repeat all the letters and get tongue-tied. But we all know what I'm talking about when I say diverse families. We're going to learn some skills, and then you're going to practice some of those skills around this notion of conversation as a great entry point for young children, or this notion of what I call conversation as curriculum. So unfortunately, those who have that asterisk by your name, you won't be able to participate in these rich experiences, but hopefully you'll be able to take the handouts and do some things with them later. And I've created community agreements for us. This topic can sometimes be charged for people. So just be mindful of your feelings, your reactions, and your responses. But we don't mean for you to be silenced. We mean for you to still speak up and out, but just be mindful of what you're saying and how you're saying it, or what you're putting in the chat box. But we want to make use of the chat box in terms of the chat box being an opportunity to share information to everyone that's on the call. And then our time together, just going to quickly go over our time together. We're going to describe some challenges and issues faced by families, diverse families, in early learning settings. Then we're going to analyze our own values, perceptions, and beliefs and practices about diverse families around what we show up with and what we believe. Then our third piece for our time together is to identify and begin to work towards creating a more inclusive early childhood environment. And when I say inclusive, I define inclusion as action. So there should be an equal sign behind that word inclusive, and then the next word should be action. We are not inclusive if we're not acting on what we've learned and what we're doing. So simply, inclusion is action. Without action, it's business as usual. So we're going to jump right in. You're going to play a bingo game. So I guess, Leah, those who have the asterisk won't play the bingo game, right? And
right, we're just going to put them all in people who can't join the breakout room.
Right, so you're going to go into a breakout room for a few minutes, and it's going to be 3 of you in there. So that means as many people in your room can answer any other questions on the bingo game card for you. Once your card is filled up, when we come back, you're going to scream bingo if you have their name and an answer for every single one. All right? It's going to be a fun game, but an educative game also. You won't stay in that room for a very long time. You're going to go to a few rooms to meet a few people who are playing the bingo game, but we're going to put 3 of you in the room together so that you can all share and see if you can answer some of those questions for your roommates. And then you're going to come back and go to another room. We'll probably do that 3 times and then move forward depending on who has enough answers. So Leah put a copy of the bingo PDF in the chat for those who probably didn't get the email she sent before the session. And you can open that and type in it on your computer if you can, or you can print it if you're in the office and you want to do that, or you could just look at it on your screen. There's no demand for how you actually use it. So I'm putting on the screen what you have in that handout. Leah, are you going to open the breakout or should I?
I'll go ahead and open it now.
Awesome. Just give them 4 minutes.
Okay.
People, give them 4 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's just jump in. Let's jump in and see who was able to answer some of these questions. So we're going to skip the one speaks more than one language. We put that one there just to get people used to talking to people who they don't know in the breakout space. Hey, Nancy Rodriguez. I know Nancy. She's over there in North Oakland. The second question says, knows a program that lists LGBTQIA2S in their brochures or website. Did anyone answer that? Could anyone answer that in your breakout space? Did they know an early learning program that actually spells out, that doesn't say we welcome our families, but they list the different types of families? Nancy, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, at Duck's Nest, we list on our website that we're welcoming to LGBTQ plus families, and also in our brochures and our parent handbook. We explicitly mention them, and also gender affirming care for young children.
That is so important, because families are looking for those words that they know. If we write, oh, we welcome our families, we don't know what that means, because that might not be you welcome my family specifically. So strategy is making sure that our information and materials actually spell out that we welcome children across the disability continuum. We welcome, families who look like this, who make up this way. As Nancy said, we welcome gender affirming children whose biological gender may not be how they identify with the rest of the world. Those things speak volumes to families. So thank you, Nancy. The next one was, can name 3 children's books about LGBTQ plus families. Was anyone able to answer that by naming 3 children's books? Just, if you could, just go ahead and unmute and tell us what it was. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I might butcher the titles, but I think I have them right. There's Tango Makes 3.
One of my favorites.
And then it's Dad, Papa, and Me. And then there's another one that I think is just like ABC Families, or something similar to that. And it goes through the alphabet and talks about all the different LGBTQ related words and things like that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Megan. There are so many. And once you, if you go to the public library, in the children's library, and know you're looking for them, they can get you more. Or if you're purchasing them, once you put the search in for one, and I just be cautious that some of them are better than others. And then some of them have the topic there, but they don't spell it out. I remember there's one infant and toddler book. It's not ABC Babies, but they're babies all over the book. But when you look at who's caring for the babies, you actually see diverse families caring for the babies. But it's a way for the adult to talk about the picture in the context that's appropriate for infants and toddlers. So thank you, Megan. Can remember wanting a toy or article of clothing, but we're told it's not for boys or not for girls. Anyone? You can unmute and just share with us your response to that, or someone else's response. Hannah.
Hi, Shawn. Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody, good morning. So I was sharing I got to talk to Sylvia. He was super nice. I'm sorry, whoever did not meet before, was super nice talking to Sylvia. So I was sharing recently that's going on with us. My son, he just out of nowhere, he wanted to grow long hair. That was actually for the past few years he wanted to. So he started growing hair a lot. And it's below his shoulder line. And he has got so much that if we go outside, it's like, oh, does she want anything? And even he has this, the tone, he has this tone where, like, oh, does she want anything? Oh, her, she. And then there are people who actually have told him, why are you growing hair? It's a girl thing to do. You're not supposed to grow hair, and like directly on his face. He's a 5th grader. So he wants it just because he wanted to grow hair and see if he can. And now he's like done with it, because it's like a lot for him to take shower. He's like, Mommy, I can't do that. And so he's got a lot even from some family members, and he's taking it to his heart. So I was talking to him that it's okay that people have their opinions, but don't change yourself depending on what anybody outside of your home has to say anything about you. Like when me and my husband, we both are supporting him if he wants to grow his hair. But it's the mentality of people is like, oh, only a girl can grow long hair, not the boys can't. You will look like a girl, you're gonna start wearing girl dresses. So, but he's not changing on that end, on the sexuality, but it's just like he wants to grow hair. because he used to like this guy a long time ago who used to play cricket and was a captain, and he grew hair to win a World Cup. So he had this whole childish thing, and he came up to, the world bringing this upon him, and then he's losing himself a little bit. So that's the one that I shared with Sylvia, was growing his hair, and people be like, "Oh, you look like a girl. You're gonna start working in the kitchen." And he had answered.
Yeah. Thank you for that personal share. And that's true that our society still attributes things like length of hair to what we call across that extreme ends of the continuum, a boy or a girl. And it's unfortunate. So we're always happy when families are saying, no, our son can, do what he chooses with his hair and affirm. So that's what we're always excited to hear that. Know someone who struggled to find adequate childcare. Know someone who struggled. Everyone should say yes to that at this point, right? We were all shaking our heads, yes, right. Has heard someone insulted with a homophobic term. Maria, you unmuted yourself?
I want to say I have the problem with Latinos is I don't know, it's very cultural, religious, and it's very hard for them to accept it, accept that they have a one child. In this case, I remember the parents coming to me and say, please, teacher, don't let my child play in the house with the dolls, because I don't wanna be my son be a gay. I say, wait a minute, excuse me. Let me tell you something. If your son play with the dolls in the house, it's because it's representing of you. Let him to learn about the paternity, to share the love. This is what we need to teach of them. It's love. They exploring. They want to share the same they saw in the house. So, it's very important. Give the support in preschool or early, the teachers, we need to be more able to understand and accept it. It's very hard for the families. And sometimes it's hard for us to teach them and teach the kids. I think that's what I want to have this class, this training, because I want to be more, more prepared to have the tools, correct tools to support the families, the kids, and everybody. That's only what I want to say.
That's great. And I just want to say, I think that notion of Latinos, I think it crosses all racial and ethnic and gender lines, that people still show up with that mindset, Maria. And I think having that brave conversation with the family is a strategy. You just modeled for those on the call, like one thing that we can do in response. I know I was that teacher in the beginning. We had this red sequence dress in my classroom when I taught preschool. And I happened to be in Georgia. I was in Georgia. Georgia is one of those states where Saturday, everybody goes to the bar and fights and has sex. And then Sunday, everybody goes to church. It's like this weird dichotomy. And we had this red sequence dress, and little Derek loved to put the dress on. And then when I realized that his father would come between 4 and 4:15, it was usually 10 minutes to 4, I would start wiggling him out of the dress, because I didn't want to do what you did with that parent. I didn't want to talk to his father, because his father basically said, don't let my son put on the dress. But then as I gained my capacity as an educator, I started letting him keep it on, because I wanted his father to engage not just him, but me. And then I was able to say, well, developmentally, some things are going on. Most of the clothes that we put on our male-born children are only one material. If you go to the store, you'll see it. You'll see one rack of quote unquote boys' clothes, then you'll see 6 racks of girls' clothes made from various materials. That sequence dress was made from those other materials. Him wanting to put on those high heel shoes to be up and for it to hit the back of his foot, that's all sensory. It's all developmental. Then when I really got brave, Maria, and I would say, so here's how we understand it, but if he were to grow up and be gay, I would still love him as his teacher. Now, of course, I said that thinking, if this man punches me in the face, but I got to that point where I was no longer willing to hold it in. and we were having a conversation that wasn't contentious. So because he was listening and we were going back and forth, I knew that I could keep adding pieces. But that's strategy for many of us to build the capacity to be able to engage with our families in those types of conversations. So thank you, Maria. I think we stopped at had heard someone insulted with a homophobic term. Oh, wait a minute, Luz, you raised your hand. Go ahead, Luz.
Hi, I thank you. I searched on my experience with my son and him go to the preschool, and he loved to play the kitchen area in the room, and the teacher say, I need to talk to you because your son a lot play with this area, and you need to talk to him. Don't play this area because I see something bad, you know. Hey, come on, what happened with you? Because my son love this area and cook and something, and I don't know. She say that, you know, and I met with that teacher because, hey, don't say that, because my son is explored, you know, the areas, different areas, and she say, oh no, you need to talk to him. Don't play in this area because this is for girls. And oh my goodness, oh no, 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 no. So need to talk to the principal and take a meeting with the teacher and what happened with you, and don't say that. And you know, you need to
Mhm.
accept it with the guys playing different places.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that, Luz. I love hearing everyone's story. So I'm going to jump around here a little bit because we have so many and I want to be conscious of the time. I'm going to jump down to the last one here. Knows what LGBTQIA2S stands for. Megan, you're shaking your head. You want to mute and tell us?
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna go out of order, aren't I? No, I'm not. I got them.
All right.
It's lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer. Sometimes questioning is included in that queue.
That's right.
I is intersex. A is either asexual or aromantic. And then two-spirit is the 2S.
That's right. Thank you, Megan. And like I said, this wasn't a LGBT plus 101 that would have taken us deep into those, but these are all things that you can Google. If you're thinking, wait a minute, they added some more letters. I only remember there being 4 letters. You could always just Google it. It'll pop up and it'll tell you all you need to know as additional work outside of our time together. Thank you all for sharing. If we had more time, we would have answered them all. And I tried to mimic this, Leah and I, the way I actually do it in person with people walking around the room and meeting people. So thank you all who decided to play. I just want to move us forward. So defining family is the next stage of our educational learning journey today. So there are many definitions that you can find that define family. You can look at the California Early Learning Foundations and Frameworks. They define family. You could look at something like the National Head Start Parent and Family and Community. They define family in the broad way, which is why they use the words parent and family, and they distinguish between the difference between the two. But the American Association of Family and Community Sciences has a definition that I like. It's succinct and it's encompassing, and that's what I was looking for. So it says 2 or more persons who share resources, share responsibility for decisions, share values and goals, and have a commitment to one another over time. I love that. I love that. So this essentially was saying, you know, the 20 years that I lived in the Bay Area, and my roommate and I were a family. We weren't blood related. We didn't have a romantic relationship, but by this definition, we were definitely a family. I appreciate that. Then it goes on to say, the family is the climate one comes home to. Wow. And it is a network of sharing and commitment that most accurately describes the family unit, regardless of blood, legalities, adoption, or marriage. And this is huge because what I find is we often have many families that show up into our early learning settings, and all that's a part of that bottom line is who they are, but we never know. We never know. And it's something about us not knowing that I still deem as problematic, that families don't feel they belong or we're not welcoming enough for them to what? Offer up their family unit and how their family comes together. So this notion of helping families, one of our large roles is to help diverse LGBT plus families belong in meaningful ways, not that we say, well, we have it written in our policy, but that their everyday interactions with us demonstrate that they belong here, that them and their child or children belong here and we want them here. That's the big takeaway. So your first group work today, you have a handout. It's called Forms Loom Large. So Leah sent it to you all in an email. It's by Dr. Kayla Compton. She's a physician in San Francisco. She has an MD and a PhD, you know, those really, really smart people like Bruce Perry who have a PhD and an MD. That's a lot of school. Leah just put it in the chat box for those who can't find it. So you actually need this because you're going to go into a breakout space. We're going to give you 5 minutes to read it and then another 8 minutes to talk about it. And then we're going to come back. And there's some questions at the bottom of Forms Loom Large that I want you to answer in your small groups of 2 or 3 people. All right, welcome back, everyone. I know, it's never enough time to talk. We always want 10 more minutes. I know it happens every day in every Zoom. But with the time we had, when we read Dr. Compton's Form Looms Large and discussed the question, what were some of the things that came up in your discussion? Blake? I'm just calling people now randomly who are on.
Actually, I read the wrong case study. I read conversation as curriculum.
Okay, so you'll be ahead of the game when we get
I'm ahead of the game. Yeah. So come back to me.
All right, Sonia, in your group. All right, you just unmuted. You go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. I just expressed the frustration. And it's not even me in the scenario, but it's this the frustration about always have to explain and also that you know, like I work in a place that is called the Homeless Prenatal Program, and we have to be really walking into everybody, but like I was like looking at the way that you're putting it in regards to being inclusion and to really take action. And I just say that we are walking into everybody, but really make sure that everywhere in the building is says welcome with the different things that we have to put in there, and also our staff being understandable of that and accepting to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we talked.
Nancy, did your group talk about the messages the children are receiving from these interactions at all?
Yeah, we did. Sonia and I were in the same group, so I'll
okay.
Right after her. But yeah, we talked about the view of the child, seeing their parent have to continuously explain their family as feeling othered and different, and you know, and make them feel less confident in their beautiful family structure, which is everything to them. Their family is everything to them. And then of course we talked about, as Sonia said, different ways on different levels, from our administrative systems to our training and day-to-day interactions with families to foster that sense of belonging and prevent that othering as much as possible.
That's right. That's right. Those the message the children get, and then what can we do to prevent this from happening again to the next family, because there will be another family. So one of the things, thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Sonia. One of the things that we can do in our early learning settings is, I use the state of California's form that most preschool childcare programs use. They just download it once they get their license. So the old form, and I say old form, when I was a center director and program manager, this was the form that we used. It said father's name and mother's name. And I actually had a grandmother who was raising her granddaughter. And every time she had to sign something, because she was the legal guardian, she would cross out where it said mother's name or parent's name. And in my mind, I was thinking, she's always crossing this out. This old lady is so evil. And then one day, because you know, we all come with the judgment, that's the bottom of the brain. When I happened to, you know, lean in when she was signing in, And I said, why do you always cross it out? And she said, well, I'm her grandmother, not her mother. This is saying that I'm her mother. She says, I'm her guardian. She said, showing my daughter's in the bad way, but I'm believing that my daughter's going to be back into a better way and get her daughter back. And I just need everybody to know that I'm her guardian and her grandmother, and I love being her grandmother. So she brought me to this place of, oh, the form reminded her not of being a grandmother, but of her daughter, that it was this reminder that we were saying, your family has to look this way. And if it doesn't look this way, then your family's fractured. And that was definitely not the message that I wanted to convey. So we end up changing the form. And I believe they changed it at the state level. Not that I did any serious advocacy work, but I think it got into the hands of the right people to represent, a variety of different stages of families and parents in terms of adding to it. Then there's one program in San Francisco, Buen Dia Family School. I happened to provide them some PD years ago. Now, their form actually, everything that's here, it literally is a blank open space where they tell the families, put who you need to put here. That's all it says. No title, no assumptions. It's a blank space. And I thought if that doesn't tell a family, whoever needs to be here can be here, we welcome them without this particular traditional title. So again, this is just one thing that we can do to send a concrete message to parents and families that you're welcomed here, regardless of role and title, regardless of role and title. All right, so now in a few, you're going to have to unmute. I'm going to type while you talk. So I want you to think of times or experiences that you've had where you felt welcome, and then we're going to get to the unwelcome. Times or experiences that you had where you felt completely welcome. You can just unmute and say what it was, and I'm going to type it while you talk. Blake?
I have an unwelcome.
Okay, you want to start with, okay, we'll start with the unwelcome then. All right, we're starting with the unwelcome. Blake just changed the flow.
Sorry. A look, I've gotten a look from a family that lets me know there's another Black lady.
Right. Many people are probably familiar with that look. Right, thank you, Blake. So that didn't make you feel too welcome.
No.
Someone else, a time when you felt unwelcome. A time when you felt unwelcome. I'll say one. I love to clothes shop. It is my weakness in the universe. I go into Macy's and there are always 25 extra small shirts still there because I don't believe these small bodies exist. And then there are what? 3 mediums, 2 larges, and 1 extra large. And they usually disappear quickly. So every time I'm in Macy's, I feel unwelcome in Macy's based on when I get to the clothes rack, everything is an extra small. Karen says, hey, Shawn, I'd love to see the new form updated again to have gender identity instead of sex. There you go, Karen. All right, Karen caught that. Yes, Karen, we're always updating. And I often say, Karen, here's the problem. Every time the problem is within the problem or in the solution, every time we get there, and this is a part of the process, is what I told people, that every time someone else was born and has an experience, someone else is going to rise up and say, I don't see me reflected there, which is so each and every time we say, okay, we're including this, we inadvertently are excluding without even knowing it, which is why Buen Dia said, we don't want any box, we don't want any title. You simply have the space to write who is important to you and your child and your family, which is a whole nother way of saying all these other pieces, we don't even need to know in those ways. We just need to know who you say loves you and your child or your children as you enroll them in our program. So thank you for that reminder, Karen. All right, I know we felt unwelcome. Maria, then Sylvia, times you felt unwelcome.
Well, not so much myself, but when my daughter goes into certain stores, they follow her. And she's like, why do they always follow me? Is it because I'm gay? And I says, how are they going to know you're gay?
Right,
and I guess
right.
has that feeling that why am I being followed?
Yeah. I tell your daughter, I know that feeling. Mhm. I know that feeling. Sometimes when I'm in the mood, Sylvia, and I have time, I'll make them follow me. I grab stuff and act like I want to buy it. And I won't buy it. I make them work. You're going to follow me? I'm going to make you work for following me. Or then you want to get them to tell her, if she wants them to actually stop following her, give them a task. Say, I'm looking for these in the size 10. They're never going to come back. And I need this. And do you know what this is?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
They never come back. So Sylvia says, my daughter goes into the stores and gets followed. Maria?
It's the same. They happen to me when I go to Gap or other stores, you know, I have a bag, they always back to me and looking, I steal something and I feel very welcome. But the more hard things for me is when I speak in Spanish with another Latino people and they talking to me like, excuse me, I don't speak Spanish. And I say, come on. And when I start to speaking with them in English and they say, oh, you speak English? I say, yes. And I say, why? I asked them, why you don't speak Spanish with me? And the answer was, because I want you to learn English. And I say, hello, if you want to learn English, please answer me in Spanish and teach me. Do you need to say blah, 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 blah?
Right. We call that language, that's that language privilege, Maria. Wow.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. So sometimes some of us have felt welcome. Times you felt welcome.
I think just eye contact and a smile. If you walk into either, you know, a store, a meeting, whatever, just that acknowledgement.
Being seen. Thank you, Sylvia. Anyone else? Times you felt welcome.
When I see a representation of me or my children or my son, whether it's toys or a book or clothing or.
Thank you, Blake. Mina, Nancy, Maria, Megan, times you felt welcome.
I have one, Shawn. It kind of stems from an unwelcome moment. My daughter used to represent herself in very gender fluid ways. So she would wear like suits and people would misgender her all the time and prevent her from going into the bathrooms. Like they would stop her if she was going into the bathroom. And so she feels very welcome when someone would ask her pronoun or when they get it right and see her, rather than making assumptions about her. So I don't know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Asking is such a welcoming way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. Mina?
I always feel super welcome at church. It's just a really joyful place. And so I want to share that with newcomers to church too.
Yeah. Thank you, Mina. Megan, times you felt welcome.
Mine's pretty similar to Nancy, but more on a personal experience with the pronouns. But I think when other people set the standard by sharing theirs, or like just being clear that all people are welcome, and that sort of inclusion equals action piece that you were talking about.
Thank you, Megan. Awesome. If I can just type, we can move along. Yeah. So we did this because it's so easy for us to forget that the experiences that we have with families every single day are sending this perpetual message of welcome or unwelcome. Even for families who may stay enrolled in your program for 2 years. I've had families say, well, we stayed there because it was close to my job, or it was close to my house. It was convenience. It was close to my work, or it was close to my partner's work. But we felt unwelcome there the whole time. It happens all the time. Like they experience this perpetual and consistent feeling of unwelcome, but they still show up. That means they're getting something, but they're still experiencing this kind of, we don't see ourselves, as Blake said, reflected here. So our work is to really dig deep. And some of that digging deep is to ask them. And then some of that digging deep is to say, let's review as Nancy and I think it was who was in the room with you earlier were saying that you were talking about the different levels. That
Sonia.
we've got it. Sonia, thank you. We've got to interrogate our policies, our programs, and our practices. And so often what we want to do is jump right to the practice. And then we don't have a policy to back it up. We don't have a program to back it up because we're saying, you who are on the floor with the children do this, but there's nothing to back it up. So this notion of welcome happens at multiple levels. And Nancy brought up one. She says, our website and our brochures and marketing information have it spelled out. That's at one level. That's at a high administrative executive level that was determined. So that has to trickle down into the sites and into the classroom so that everyone understands we welcome families this way, specifically in our program. Thank you all. All right, so we're going to move fast quickly. So children are asking us a question. Children are asking us a question. So Leah, I'm getting a little bit anxious here when I'm looking at the slides. So this video that I'm actually triaging right now with all of you, it's called Both of My Mom's Names Are Judy. It was made in San Francisco. You hear elementary school children talking about being the children of LGBTQ plus families in their experience in elementary school. I wasn't going to play it, but I think it's so powerful. The video is old. It's really old. And one person said, well, Shawn, you all need to, like a lot of the kids in this video are now, in their mid 20s or early 30s. That's how old the video is. And when the video starts to play, we're not having an earthquake. It's just the video is playing that way because it was VHS and we had to convert it to digital. And I still play it. And I was explaining this to Leah. I play the old video and we haven't made a new one because if we made a new one, guess what? The children would be saying the same thing. The only thing that would change would be they would have on modern clothes and the video would be more modern, but the content would be exactly the same, which is why we've got to interrogate ourselves around these children were asking this thing years ago, over decades ago, and why are children still being responsible for asking these same questions? So with that, I'm going to play the video, and I just want us to think about these two questions that are showing up while the video is playing.
Both of my mom's names are Judy. Coincidence, I guess. I have an extended family. There are lesbians, gays, straights, and kids in this family, and I like it a lot.
Most families have a mom and a dad, and so mine just has two moms. And I have a dad, but my mom got divorced.
I live with my mom and my rabbit, and my dad lives in San Francisco with his boyfriend, and I visit him sometimes.
Well, there's me, my dad, David, my rat, and my teddy bear.
Some kids think it's better to have a mom and a dad, but I think it's better to have two moms or two dads.
Well, I like it this way. I think I'd like it this way better than any other way.
I'm lucky because no one else has two dads in my class.
Well, practically every day I feel special, except when kids tease me about it. Kids teased me a lot because of my lesbian parents, and they said that I was lesbian because my parents were lesbian. I went up to this kid and I told him, and he started saying, "Your moms are lesbian, that's disgusting. All lesbians do is sex all day." And I said, "Do you even know what a lesbian is?" He said, "No."
That's what I think. They probably don't even know what faggot means.
Why do you think they do that?
To push somebody else's buttons, to make them mad.
if somebody did something wrong or you know, got a bad grade or something like that, they would automatically be gay. Because, you know, if you're bad, you're gay. Because if you're gay, you're bad to them.
Nobody ever got in trouble for saying faggot or that kind of stuff. Except for from one teacher in that school who actually I know is gay.
They just said, well, there's nothing to really get mad about. And I told them, yes, there is, and they just didn't pay attention to me.
They would come up to the kid and say, you know, I really don't want to hear that, and then go away, and then the next day the kid's calling people faggot and gay bob again.
When Charles was getting called gay and the cootie boy and faggot and all that kind of stuff, I felt nervous, like everybody was against me, like against my family.
It makes me feel right. Hurts my feelings. Made me feel really bad. And I was younger and felt like it was all my fault and my parents' fault. And then I started to wish I didn't have lesbian parents.
I would have liked it if they had talked about families more, and when they did talk about families, if they had talked about gays and lesbians at all, because they didn't.
They've never actually talked about since I've been there.
And it's just kind of weird for me to have people like that don't know that there were lesbian and gay parents.
Well, there's only like 1 or 2 books in my classroom that has lesbian and lesbian people in it. In fact, they only have lesbians, no gay people. Well, they just have one man who is gay, but they don't have the person that he loves.
We've got books about families that talks about, you know, like dads with kids and moms with kids, but I mean, we have a bunch of them. In fact, kindergarten and first grade are doing families again, but I don't think we have any books about gay and lesbian parents.
Rachel and I were sitting in the hall, and a boy came out and came up to Rachel and said, "Your mom's gay, huh? She's a lesbian," and it was sort of in an offensive way. And then our friend later that day when we were leaving told us that this one boy said that me and my other friend were carrying on their tradition because we're really close friends and both of our parents are lesbian. So, you know, and I guess he said that as an insult, but it's not really an insult, but we are just friends. And then we went to the principal and asked if we could go around to the classrooms and talk about it. And she said, well, if you can get permission from the teachers, then I'll come with you, and you can. So we told them that our parents were lesbian and that we didn't really see anything wrong with that. So to please stop using that as an insult or fags or something like that. We basically just said that we'd been teased and that we would really appreciate it if they would stop that and that there was really nothing wrong with being gay or lesbian.
What do you feel like the impact of doing that was?
I think that nobody really used that insult anymore, and it made them understand more, I think.
I think that it kind of is better to be open about your parents being lesbian or gay. And just because, I mean, I would have gone off through my whole life thinking that I was the only person if, you know, nobody ever told me.
It would be easier for me to be open about my lesbian parents, my lesbian moms, if teachers would talk to kids about lesbian and gay parents. and they would tell them that they weren't bad. Or that straight people and lesbian and gay people are equal. And that they shouldn't tease other people who decide to, quote, come out of the closet about their parents.
I think part of the reason a couple of the kids felt uncomfortable is because we weren't talking about it till 3rd grade. And I think that kindergarten and 1st grade isn't too young.
They could start having people talk about, like kids talk about it to the whole school and tell them that gay and lesbians aren't bad and that they're no different from any other parents or people.
It would be good if they would talk about all kinds of families, you know, having a mom and a dad and having just a mom or just a dad and having 2 moms or 2 dads or, you know, whatever. But when they talk about them, say something about them, not just some people have 2 moms and some people have 2 dads and then go on, you know. Because I think if there was enough time and everybody got sort of used to the fact that that's what we were talking about, there would be a lot of questions. And I think maybe that's one of the things that teachers are scared of, that there would be a lot of questions and they don't know how to answer them.
That was huge. They don't know how to answer them. So I'm paying attention to the time, but I want to encourage you all when this goes up on the YouTube website to come back to just the video with your team, with your coworkers, with people who do the work with you or raise children with you, and then have a dialogue and a reflective dialogue around what are the children asking of us? To me, the big takeaway there, what they're asking, they're saying, why aren't the adults in our lives doing anything about this? Why did we have to go to the principal? And then the principal says, if the teacher lets you, you can make everybody in the school do whatever you want. The principal put all the responsibility on those 2 girls. Thankfully, they had agency, you know, to be able to speak up and speak out. But what they're asking of us is for their lives to be reflected back in a positive way in the context of school. And then that second question, how do we keep children and families we service from experiencing this type of social injustice? We change our policies. We make sure that the program is what implementing the policies and that in practice it's integrated into everything we do. So this integration, I often tell folk, it's not an equity statement, but then equity is embedded into everything you do. Equity is weaved into everything you do. And I just want to encourage you all to go back to that video and watch it again and again and again, because every time I watch it, and I've probably seen it hundreds of times, I hear something different each and every time from those very mature elementary school students who were only 7, 8, and 9. You couldn't have got that from me at 7. you just couldn't have. I would have been saying, can I go play soccer? Just another, so there was a task force in New Mexico in 1990 that was created for young children and their families. And they just came up with another kind of expansive definition of family that I like. And I just wanted to offer this up to you. So Mina, the only way to access this very old video, so after today, I want to say today is Thursday, probably no Monday at the latest, Leah will have this video on the First 5 Alameda's YouTube page. You can go to the YouTube page and access the video there as part of the presentation, but it doesn't exist anywhere on its own. I mean, I have it here in my external drive, but it was originally a VHS tape that I had converted because I still use it, but it doesn't come digital form or even in DVD, which says how old it is, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So that second question is about creating inclusive programs for families. Creating inclusive programs. Remember, inclusion is action. Inclusion is action. So I'm going to go through this part. And this component was, adapted from Louise Derman Sparks and Julie Olson Edwards' anti-bias frame, because welcoming LGBT+Q families is on the anti-bias continuum. if you say that you're doing anti-bias education. But I'm going to jump right into those conversations, because that's what those children were saying. Nobody's talking about this, and it's our lives, and it's rendered silent, and now it's all falling on us. So if we consider how hurtful silence is, we're going to give children vocabulary for what they want to talk about regarding their families, their diverse families. We're going to do it with them so that they don't have to do it alone. And then we're giving it voice because we're taking away what the fear that can be attached to it if nobody's talking about it. And then when we do that as adults, we help them not to rely on what other children who have inaccurate information about families to gain their knowledge. So adults often say, I don't have language to articulate what I think is happening. So I just don't say anything. We're going to give you some strategies to deal with that. We're going to give you some strategies to deal with that. I'm going to skip this question for now. So this notion of holding clarifying conversations as an anti-bias component as a step forward. So let me give you an example of what's on the screen. Tobias notices that Wyatt's papa and daddy, he has a papa and daddy, and he asks, where is their mama? He's 3.5. He's curious and wants to know why. If we remain silent, he's going to end up forming his own answer. But we could easily respond to him. And we're going to get to that. Mariah seems taken by Marla's talking about her mother and not having a father. Mariah tells Marla that a family just can't have a mom and a daughter, that all families have a mom, children, and the daddy. Tim and Steve seem intent on ostracizing some children with same gender families. They use put downs and tell them they can't come into some play areas. As the adult, you overhear a child stating that they wished Nyla's parents were their parents because Nyla has a mom and a dad, and they don't. Here's the biggest one. This is the one I think, I use this word fun cautiously, but this is the one I have the most fun with children because it goes deep when their family values show up in the classroom. Children start discussing parents who look different than children. One child says that's because people are adopted. That's why they have families that don't look like them. These are those conversations that require adult guidance and scaffolding. But too often we leave children alone and we go whisper about it in the break room, but we don't offer any support around these very important conversations, So Louise and Julie offer 5 pieces. So this is just another strategy for having inclusive conversations. So I'm going to break down these 5 in the next slides. And they start really with us observing as adults. And one thing that I tell teachers when I'm coaching is that observation is your #1 teaching strategy. We learn observation as a noun, but it's really a verb. If you observe well, it's probably the most effective strategy that you can carry throughout your teaching career. So this notion of listening has attached to it observing. So often this notion of finding out what children are thinking and listening, children are really saying, how do they love each other here? Not how do they have sex? How do they love each other? It's our adult construct that usually puts adult behaviors to children's questions, and we've got to stop that on our own. So Kiana's mom and her mommy love each other the same way Sonia's mom and dad love each other. I've actually said this to children, and each and every time I say it, they say, oh, okay. Then they walk away and keep playing because that's what they're trying to figure out. They're not saying, so how do her mom and mommy have sex? I know at 4, they're not, unless they've experienced the wrong thing, that's not what they're asking us. They're literally asking this other big experiential thing that they actually, I think, understand better than we do. We've got to listen as the entry point. Then we've got to tell the truth. We've got to tell the truth. And if we can't tell the truth, then we need to, if we're going to follow up, we need to say, I need to go talk to Nancy, and I'm going to come back later and talk to you about it after I talk to Nancy, but we've got to tell the truth. So we got to check for understanding and action here as the third point. That's really what we're doing. We're checking for what do they understand? What do these 3-year-olds understand? What do these 4 or 5-year-olds understand? Do they all understand it the same way? Do they understand it differently? That's our responsibility. Here's the big one. This is that values-driven piece that shows up. You may say, in our program, here at the ABC Preschool, or we may say, you know, some people believe that, but others believe something different. I hear this all the time. Here's how we treat people in our school. Well, clearly we don't, because they just treated the child another way. That's what I want to say, but I don't say it. This one, number 4, becomes what I call stickly and prickly, because values shift from person to person and family to family. This requires what we call a both and approach. Here's the both and approach. We want to validate what young children bring. Your validation does not mean you accept it. I'll say it again. You want to validate what young children bring. Here's what I mean. So Wyatt says, my grandpa says it's not okay for 2 ladies to get married. He blurts it out at circle. The validation is, Wyatt, some people believe that. Apparently your grandpa believes that, but some people believe that it is okay for 2 ladies to get married and love each other and have a family. Validation is not acceptance. What we often think is, if we validate what Wyatt just said, then I accept it. We validate it because that's how we get Wyatt to actually hear the other side, even as a 4-year-old. Here's a trick. That's how we get 50-year-olds to hear the other side. Validation is not acceptance. In these next slides, I'm going to move quickly just because you have them in your handouts. I just give some experiences if we want to have family-centered practices within our programs. Notice I'm not using the word child-centered, but family-centered practices, because children show up with the context and conditions through which they live, and that is their families. And this is often the part that we leave out in our education programs, because we're pushing child-centered practices down people's throats. And then the fracture is we don't really consider the family in the beginning. We consider the family as an afterthought. So these are just some experiences that you can reflect on around children's lives here. The second piece is around this notion of how we decide and make decisions within our program, and what we see as power and how we share power, not just with our employees, but with our enrolled families. This next one is about centering and holding up and making visible our commitment to diversity, not just in written form, but in everyday interactions. And I'm going to give you some more strategies in just a few slides to get there. And this final one around experiences is we've got to help our families build networks within our programs, because they show up with lots of resources. They show up with ideas that we don't think of. They show up with materials, a different level of energy, because they're not with 12 and 20 preschoolers all day long. So their energy is oftentimes different when they need to show up. And they have community connections that we oftentimes don't have in real lived experiences that they can bring into our programs. So to do that, I say the foundation of support is a framework. The foundation of a support is a framework. So one that I love and share with everybody who will listen to me, I've adapted this from Maggie Bendikini and her colleagues, their article on an inclusive anti-bias framework for teaching and learning. But this is a foundational strategy for welcoming LGBTQ+ families in our early learning settings around these entry points, feelings, thinking, how we share and how we respond. What I encourage you to do is to use this slide, take it back to your programs, interrogate it yourself, and think about, when I answer these questions related to young children and related to LGBTQ families, what do I hear and see and experience? What could I do different? What are my entry points? Do I hear it and remain silent? Do I hear it and engage them and shut it down? Or do I hear it and does it become a vital part of our curriculum? How can you embed this, regardless of what curriculum you're using in your program, regardless of how you see families and parents, if you work in a clinic, if you're a therapist, if you work in a healthcare setting, if you're serving young children, all of these entry points actually show up in your work. They all show up in your work. I think this is a fantastic framework. I can't speak enough about it, but the training isn't on the framework. So I don't want to keep going down that rabbit hole. I will offer up 4 components that I oftentimes wonder with adults around this framework in terms of all the low-hanging fruits on the anti-bias continuum for teaching and learning that we call education. That these topics that fall in this framework, and the topic of diverse families, it falls under what I call the big 4 ideas. That things that are local. My family's local to me. Things that are familiar. My family's familiar to me. Things that are relevant. My family's relevant to me. And things that are concrete. I know that that's my dad and that's my papa. I know that that's my abuelita. I know that that's my tia. I know that that's my nan. I know that that's my granny. I know that that's my mom. And I know that that's my mama. That's all concrete. This should become part of what the everyday experiences that we call the curriculum. Local, familiar, relevant, and concrete. They fit into any structure where young children are showing up. Playgroup, family resource center, preschool, childcare, after school program, family childcare, elementary school. No matter where they are, this fits in clinic, mobile unit, children's library. They fit in there. It's our role and responsibility to make sure that we're using the framework to guide our thinking and our work. Then, of course, we need to take note. Take note that these entry points are going to be different when we consider ages and stages. So here I just wanted to offer up the difference between being 3 and 4 and 5 and how the thinking shifts. That many 3-year-olds are still very egocentric. It's their view and their family. So since I have a mom and a mama, you must have a mom and a mama. They're not even thinking about anybody else. Many 3-year-olds still show up with that 2-year-old thinking. But then 4-year-olds, end up with this experimentation and what we call moral reasoning. It needs to be my way. I have a dad and a papa. So you might not have a dad and a papa, but nothing's wrong with me having a dad and a papa, because dads and a papas are the thing to have. 5-year-olds begin to see more of the outside world. Some of us have a mom and a mama. Some of us don't. Some of us have a tia who takes care of us. Some of us don't. Some of us have a dad and a mom. Some of us don't. Their thinking shifts. Now, this isn't always linear. You may have some 3-year-olds that think like the 5-year-old. You may have some 5-year-olds that think like the 4-year-old. But it's our role to understand that when we're having these curious and inclusive conversations with young children. So another strategy that I love is called the talk strategy. Some of you have heard me talk about it before, but it's easy to remember, which is why I think I love the talk strategy. And it's very practical. And it's something that even families can use, and that those of us who work with children and families in various capacities, we can use. So the talk strategy, the T stands for tune in, not ask questions to young children, but we tune in, we watch and we listen. Remember that other strategy? We listen for what's going on with them. What are we noticing? What are we hearing? So that we know what to respond. So we make observations around, I see, I think, I wonder, and I notice. Those aren't questions, those are observations, which leads us to the asking question component. We need to ask clarifying questions, these open-ended questions, not forced, but language that summarizes what children are talking about when they're talking about I have lesbian moms or gay dads, or I have one mom and I don't have another mom, or I don't have a dad. It's me, my mom, and my dog. Whatever it is, we're helping to gain information so that we can ask better questions. And the asking better questions turns into what we call this language expansion. So it's expansion, that we're sharing vocabulary with children in 4 main ways. And I'm going to give you some examples because this is strategy on the next page. So here's what it might sound like when you're with young children. The teacher might say, some families have one mommy, some families have a mommy and a daddy, some families have 2 daddies. All families are different. Different is when people and things are not the same. That is concrete. And then the level up, once we've made that entry point, we can come back. Our families have different people in them. They love us and take care of us. Who are the people in your family? That's a real important question because it doesn't say, what does your mommy and daddy do? That's a clause that says you need to have these two structures. That's really different than who are the people in your family? And then we listen and we let them engage in this, bi-directional, ongoing conversation around who they are in the context and conditions of their families. Real important. Then the next part is we've got to repeat and restate what children say. So little girl says, my eyes are blue like my mommy. The teacher might say, yes, your eyes are similar to each other. Then the teacher might offer, I see differences too. Do you see any differences in the photos? Because the teacher noticed children are gathered while Michelle stares at the photo of her family. This is that conversation as curriculum that we were getting at Blake earlier, that it's all there in the interactions that we can have with young children to build a solid foundation. This is more contextualized, and I'm gonna get to what that is in 2 more slides. So the teacher might say, I see you're comparing the picture in the book to Jacob's family. Jacob's family has 2 moms. Yes, 2 moms, and it should say 2 dads. I see that I left that part out. Jacob's family has 2 moms and 2 dads. Yes, that is 4 people. It should say, 4 family members. I wonder if Jacob can answer some of our questions. I wonder if Jacob can answer some of our questions because we're curious. We're curious. And as I'm reading this back, that should be 5 people because if Jacob's in the family, he makes the 5th person. So I see 2 errors on this slide. It should say Jacob's family has 2 moms and 2 dads. Yes, that is 5 people if we include Jacob. If we're only including moms and dads, then it's only 4 people. Shawn just called out his own mistake. And here's this other one that requires us to listen really well. The teacher says, I heard some teasing and shaming, so I came over to help. Then the teacher says, it sounds like you're having a problem because they're teasing about what? Parent structures. How can you solve the problem without teasing or shaming? And then we listen to what? How they begin to solve it. So we don't rush in to solve it for them or to say, this is how we must talk. This is what we will do. Because when we do that, we tell children, wait till, Karen's not here, and then we can do it when she's not listening. But if we encourage them to problem solve around their issues around family structures, that's the elevating piece. So this real big piece is this notion of what we call decontextualized talk. So here's what this word really means. That we've got to contextualize who children are in the context and conditions through which they come, which means we've got to find out more about them, which is why the listening and the noticing is really important and understand their family structures. It's up to us to do this. So one of the stories that I use is there are lots of photo albums in my living room. So if you look at them, you may just think he has a lot of old photos. They must be old because they're all just there. But when you open the books, what happens? You get to contextualize piece of what's really there. I can say, oh, this book is when I was in college. I say, oh, this book is all of my dad's family. We can actually count back to my great-great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather on my dad's side of the family. And I'll say, this book is my mom's side of the family. But without me putting in what? Contextualizing it for you, you would just say, Shawn has a lot of photo albums. We do the same thing with young children around finding out their narratives about them and their family, the way those children in that video did. This is a really important piece of keeping it going, the decontextualized talk. And we don't hear this enough because we're rushing children to get through experiences. But if we settle down, ask more open-ended questions and listen, we can get to the decontextualized components of what they're getting at regarding families. So you may still be saying, Shawn, this all sounds good. I still don't know what the heck to say to children if they engage in these kinds of conversations. Well, I have 5 ways that you can respond. When you don't know quite what to say, because this is really on that continuum, becoming an anti-bias educator doesn't mean you know all the answers in every single moment. That's not what it means. It means that you are in this ongoing and continuous path to learning, growing, and developing. So a child might ask you something and you may simply say, I do not know. I'm going to go check with Celeste and let you know after we talk. But here's the big piece. If you don't come back, you just told a lie. You may say something like, when I was your age, I thought about the same thing. Nobody helped me talk about this. I'm not sure what the words to use. I will think about it and get back to you later. Then you go talk to your colleague. You might talk to their family and say, I'm going to say this and this and this. And you strategize and you come back and follow up with the conversation. It might be the same day, later in the day, or it could be the next day. Another one is, this sounds important, and I need to think about how we can talk about it. I use this one often when I'm in spaces with children and they ask me something and I know I don't have the time to engage them because I'm typically walking through, and children sometimes ask me big questions. Here's another one. I'm not sure. Let's check with Elijah and see if he can help us. Then another one that I really like. I've never been asked that question before. Let me think about it and get back to you tomorrow. We don't have to have perfect responses rolled up and ready for conversations with children. But we do need to engage them in ways that says, I will find the answer with you to these questions that you have about diverse families. That's the big message. That's the big message, that we're not leaving them alone. So Blake, now we get into that part of conversation as curriculum. Conversation as curriculum. We're going to end with this. So my good colleague and friend Bryant, who works at Pacific Primary Preschool in San Francisco, there's actually a curriculum called Widening the Circle. I don't know where they're selling it at now. So Tracy Burt, Lee Klinger Lesser, and Margaret Jareen, who used to work at First Five, they taught the first 3-unit ECE class in the nation on welcoming LGBT families in ECE. And then that class turned into this curriculum book, and then we received funding, this was years ago, to train a bunch of people in San Francisco County and Alameda County. And one of the stories in the curriculum is Kayla's story and Brian's story. So Brian's eating, snack with some kids at a table, and you can call that handout up. Now, Blake's already read it. And what you see here is what happens naturally in the conversation. So we're going to do this as our final exercise, but I want to get through some other slides and we're going to come back to this one for our final breakout. It's a great experience between him and the children. So I just want to tell you how you can continue the learning and what's in the other handouts that Leah has shared with you. So there's a great article called Do No Harm, creating welcome and inclusive environments for LGBT families in early childhood by Tracy Burt, Amy Jelnar, and Lee Klinger Lesser that you'll want to check out for your continued learning. Then there's another great article that I love from NAYC, using picture books that reflect LGBTQ+ families in early learning settings. A great resource for you for how to activate picture books as a component to welcoming families in your ongoing curriculum. And then another handout, in that project, we end up creating this checklist, because we love checklists in the United States. They make fun of us in New Zealand. They always say, you all like checking boxes. They call it ticking the box. You all like ticking the boxes there. We don't do to tick the box here. They make fun of us, but we do love checklists. Tell us we don't. We do love checklists in the United States. We do. So this is actually designed, even though you get it as a PDF, you could actually print it and fold it, and it becomes a little book. That's the way, if we were in person, I would have handed it to you that way. But you can use it as a guiding point if you're new to this, exploring how you can bring this into your work with young children and diverse families. But just 3 what I think are really great resources to continue the learning. All right, Leah. So we're going to send them into their final breakout. We got 10 minutes left. So they're going to have to read this in 3 minutes, and then they're going to talk about it in 3 minutes, and then come back and share. This is speed round. So Blake's already read it. So whoever's in Blake's room, she's already read it. So just make her talk about it. Right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. So let's maybe have 2 or 3 folk unmute, maybe a voice we haven't heard, and share some of what your group talked about in the breakout around conversation as curriculum and Bryant and these kids at lunchtime. Anyone can just jump in.
Well, in my group, we talked about trying to find the right language to answer the child so that the child understands what we're trying to say to them. And also too, it's also tricky because you don't want to disrespect the parent and you don't want the child to feel like the parent is totally wrong. So it's just kind of little fine line boundaries of what language to use, and also making sure you don't cross over into what the parent is telling, saying to the children. So
right. Validation is not agreement.
Right.
What did your group think around about Bryant's response, Blake?
Oh, we thought we all agreed that he responded pretty well. We liked how he responded. We actually all loved this story in general too. I was with Christine and Hannah, so we all 3 of us said that this was a really good story. And then too, being in EC in early childhood, I've heard conversations like this 1,000 times. So this is just great to hear again. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Blake. Anyone else? Would your group discuss regarding conversation as curriculum?
Okay, me, Luz.
Thank you, Luz.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my English is not very well, but
Your English is fine. We all understand.
So, for me, and see the letter, and we need to talk to more about this this topic in the schools, because the students play with that, with the other guys. And in my experience, my daughter played when the students, and she go to the 3rd grade, and when she play in the yard in one line, okay, and you fall in the lava, is this the play with the guys? And my daughter fell in the guy say, hey, you are gay. And my daughter said, oh, what happened? This is not a play. Is this no funny? No, my daughter is uncomfortable with this, with the guys say,
Mm-hmm.
we need to talk to more about this topic.
Right. The more we bring it into the conversations, we help children, which is what Brian's doing. He knows these children, he knows their families, and he's able to push back a little bit by saying, well, you heard something, but he's actually given, it's a really great critical thinking experiment. You heard one thing from one group of people, but you know me, and you know that I'm married to my husband, Jay. So as a 4-year-old, what are we going to do with that information? We don't leave them alone, but we engage in those curious conversations as strategy that says you belong here to the children who come from families like Brian's family structure, opposed to you don't belong here, is the big takeaway. But that requires us to be what I call brave, so that we can have brave conversations. So I'm really encouraging everybody to utilize those structures that we shared today. It is now 3:02. So we actually have to come to a hard end. I could do this for another 2 hours with you all, and I think we would all be benefiting from it. So in that, I want to thank you for your time and attention. I say, if you're on social media, you're welcome to follow me on all platforms at YesToECE. It's all things ECE that I post and share. And as a closing, of course, you're going to get your evaluation email from Leah. But I want you to just take a reflective pause and end with this in the chat as you say goodbye. I used to think, but now I believe. I used to think, but now I believe, as it pertains to welcoming LGBTQ+ families in early learning settings. I used to think, now I believe. I used to think, now I believe. Just put it in answer this as you put it in the chat, and then tell us goodbye. I used to think, now I believe.
Hey, Shawn, we want to thank you so much for being here. And thank you everyone who came to join us for this training today. We're going to be sending out the evaluation in your emails. Keep an eye out for that. And then I'll also be following up with a link to this recording and also resources for you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Karen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.